can be explained through what they call arbitrage here, okay? So let's imagine, okay, suppose you have that amount of money, 40,000, okay? And you try to make the decision. First of all, you know that 14,000, it will be safe. You know that because you don't need that 14,000 in your hand. So this is not demand deposit, not currency, but bond. Okay? But now, I complicate the story further. Okay, you want to put 14,000 bonds, but what kind of bond? Are you going to put into Indonesian bond or foreign bond? And in this case, since I'm now in the US, I'm giving an example. What about the choice between buying Indonesian bond or American bond? Okay, so let's see what happens. If you buy an Indonesian bond, this year, this one, right? This is year P. How much you will get next year? Well, you will get that amount, right? And the interest rate, whatever the interest rate, they call it yield of the bond. Okay? That is what you get. So 14,000 and the interest rate there. That's pretty straightforward. What about if you want to use that 14,000 to buy US bonds? Well, first of all, since US bond is in dollars, you need to convert this into dollars. So this is the conversion, this is the exchange rate, right? So now that you have already in US dollar, you're ready to buy the US bond. And how much do you get next year by holding that US bond? This is what you get. So if you buy Indonesian bond, this is what you get next year. If you buy American bond, this is what you get next year. By the way, any star, so I star, that means foreign interest rate. In this case, interest rate in the US. Okay. So here, there is no star because you get interest rate in Indonesia. That's local interest rate. But here, since your bond is in the US, you get interest rate in the US, right? So this is it. So now that you know how much you will get in rupiah and how much you get in dollar, you need to compare which one that you make the decision here. But this is apple, this is orange. You cannot compare because this is dollar, this is rupiah. So you have to convert this back into rupiah. How do you do that? By dividing by the exchange rate here. Okay. So this is the exchange rate. So you convert the dollar back into rupiah. Now you're ready to compare between this and this guy. Okay? Of course, it goes without saying, if this is higher than this, then you buy US bond. If this is higher than this, then you buy Indonesian bond. Because now both are in rupiah, so you can compare now. Right? But for us, in this class, remember our goal now is try to see the relation between exchange rate and interest rate. Well, we have interest rate here, I, and we have exchange rate here, capital E. We have interest rate here. So what we need to do now in order to determine the relation between exchange rate and interest rate, we equate these two. So this equals to this. Let me repeat. This equals to this. That's what they call arbitrage. Arbitrage is like, making two things equilibrium at the same time. Just in mathematical terms, just imagine you have two equations consisting of two unknown variables. How do you solve that? So in each equation, you have two variables, and you have two equations. How can you solve those two unknown variables? Well, the solution is combine those two equations, right? So that you have two simultaneous equations And you can solve the two variables because now you have two equations. So the same thing here. This is the first, this is the second. Combine the two. So this equals to this. When you do that, what you get is this equation. So now we have the relation between I, interest rate, and exchange rate. That's our goal, isn't it? And that equation is so famous, and the name of that equation is Uncovered Interest Parity, UIP. So let's spell out in language, what does it mean? This is the foreign interest rate, right? Remember, anything start is foreign interest rate. This is domestic interest rate. So that means domestic interest rate equals to foreign interest rate adjusted by the exchange rate. That's the essence of UIP. Now, if you want to understand in terms of how to operate this UIP for policy making, then we need one more step, and that is this step, which lead to this equation. Believe me, this is a high school algebra. There's no, sophistication in the conversion here, okay? So let's focus on this. As I said, this is really the key equation, which is, by the way, the same with this one. So either one, you want to focus here on this one, which is the same thing. So how to operate this? Okay. Well, let's use example. In 1997, when we had Asian crisis, few months before the crisis broke out, the expected exchange rate, so now I'm using the term expected exchange, that's the numerator here. That's why there is a superscript E. Did you see that, small e? That is expected here. So the expected exchange rate, and if it is measured as a ratio to the actual exchange rate, that means percentage, right? That means this minus this over this, it's like percentage basically, right? So if this percentage is big or increased, that was really the story right before the Asian crisis broke out. So all of a sudden, the expected rupiah value at that time goes up. Goes up means depreciate. Okay? Remember, if your rupiah used to be 2,000 per dollar and now 10,000 per dollar, that means an increase, right? So if this increase expected exchange rate, what happened? Again, let's look at this equation. What happened if this increase? The numerator here, the expected exchange rate minus the E. If this goes up, well, let's look at the choices here. Remember, this is identity, okay? So it has to be the same. If this numerator goes up, the only way to maintain this numerator is, number one, let the denominator also go up, right? Then you can maintain this. What does it mean in language if ET goes up? That means rupiah depreciate. But before 1997 July, this is so big, the expectation. So the only solution is to maintain this identity, the actual rupiah has to go up very high. And that is the story of rupiah collapse in 1997. But actually, from this equation, there's another way out. Remember, if this increase, another way out is, this has to go up, right? So if this goes up, then the domestic interest rate has to go up. Yes, indeed, that is the case. That's what the IMF told Indonesian government in 1997. You have to increase the interest rate. because the pressure from this numerator is so high. But what happened is that when they increase the interest rate, it turns out that pressure continues to be high. So exchange rate has to collapse. And that's exactly what happened. Two things happen at the same time. Interest rate is high, exchange rate collapse. But that was the crisis situation, so it's not a normal situation. Okay? So this UIP usually hold in a normal situation, but it is useful tool to understand what happened during the abnormal situation like the crisis in 1997.
Prof, just to confirm,
yes.
So the numerator of the fraction is the expected appreciation rate of the domestic currency. Is it
correct?
Also, the denominator is the expected depreciation rate. Sorry, is it? Or is
no? The numerator is the expected. The denominator is the actual.
Okay, thank you.
So only if there is a superscript e that is expected. This guy doesn't have it, so this is the actual one. Okay? So UIP is a very powerful concept, although it breaks down during the crisis. I just told you, right? But it's very powerful to explain what happened during the crisis, and also very powerful to establish the relation between interest rate and exchange rate, which is exactly the topic that you're dealing with at this moment. Now, these are the expansion of the concept. In fact, in the textbook, they don't have this, okay? But I want to introduce this concept because that's exactly what happened in Indonesia. So since you are in Indonesia, I thought it's important for you to understand. Let's jump into this case here. Okay. So basically, there's a concept which is called the excess return. So pay attention on this, the mu here. Okay. So if you look at this mu, let me mention what is here, what is here. Here is the difference between expected exchange rate and the actual exchange rate. So that's the gap between expected and the actual, okay? And here is the difference between interest rate domestic and foreign interest rate. So this is what they call interest rate differential. Okay? So, what happened in 1997, there are some speculator. The speculator expect rupiah will collapse. So that means this component will go up to the roof, right? On the other hand, Indonesian government can counter that by raising the interest rate. And if that is the case, then this gap will go up to the roof. Okay? So, at the end, you have to compare what is the benefit that the speculator will get, which is this. They got the benefit from rupiah depreciation, compared to what is the speculators losing from, which is the interest rate differential. If the benefit is greater than the loss, then speculator win. That mu become positive and high. On the other hand, if the exchange rate differential is relatively smaller than the interest rate differential, speculator lose because the mu is negative. Okay? And that's why mu is called the excess return. So that is from the standpoint of the speculator factor, because that is an excess return for the speculator. Now, if you want to know what happened in 1997, this guy is greater than this guy. And that's why many speculators became rich during that period. And most of them are foreign speculators. But now you see, right, the macro variables like interest rate and exchange rate play a so important role in explaining event like financial crisis. And I give an example here. That happened when new positive happened in Denmark, Sweden, and UK in 1992. It happened in Mexico in 1994. It happened in Thailand and Indonesia in 1997, 98. And happened in Russia and Hong Kong in 1992. So, you know, we economists, we call that event crisis, right? But for speculators, that was boom. They become super rich during that crisis.